Hello, guys. We are live here on Facebook. This is Jen Green with Property House. I am joined by Richard Dick Morris of the Morris Law Group. I'm going to be introducing him in a moment. For those of you who do not know me, again, Jen Green here. We are based out of the Metro Twin Cities in Minnesota. We help folks who need to sell their properties quickly, whether it's because of a divorce, a foreclosure, bankruptcy, impending incarceration, whatever it is, we're able to help in whatever fashion. We're super creative about how we can solve your problems. And so join with me here is Dick Morris, like I said, of Morris Law Group. He started it in 2002. He's been in law for, over 40 years. It's just a wealth of knowledge. He's helped me out in quite a few situations. And I wanted to bring on to talk today because he just has a really unwavering dedication to his clients and is considered one of the best here in the Metro. And so I wanted to talk about asset protection, business structure, all of those things, because it's really important, especially for investors when they're working, while remodeling homes or buying holds or different things like that. And even when it comes to consumers, who are purchasing a place, especially, Minnesotans, a lot of us have a second place, a cabin. And so those are things to really talk about when it comes to, keeping yourself safe in terms of structuring your deals and, protecting your assets. So, hi, Dick, how are you today?
I am doing well. Good morning.
Good. So I wanted to start off just kind of really talking about some of those business structures, right? I mean, a lot of us as investors start off as LLCs, right? Whether it's a sole proprietorship, meaning you own it yourself, or a partnership, but a lot of the times it can kind of go beyond that. And so I wanted to talk about those different types of structures, LLCs, S Corps, C Corps. Can you just kind of give a brief explanation of what all of those mean? Because I think sometimes those can get a little confusing for people.
I sure will. And Jen, thank you for inviting me to your program. I have to commend you. These programs are very helpful to the real estate profession, and it helps the professionals be all that they can be and be better at what we're doing. So thank you for all of your efforts, and thank you for inviting me to be with you today.
Absolutely.
So with respect to when you are buying or investing in real estate, your choice of entity. In Minnesota, there are 5 different types of entities or methods you can buy real estate and take title. One is individually or as a sole proprietorship. You can buy real estate with a group of people as tenants in common. And there's some out there where there's 100 people buying as tenants in common, called TICs. And they're not so much, they're not in the norm right now, but they were the rage. Or you buy it with 2 people as tenants, with the right of survivorship as a joint tenancy. That's very common for a husband and wife. So that's one way, is just individually. You can do it with a partnership. A partnership is a legal entity in Minnesota. It has an obligation to file tax returns, and on the entity level, it is a pass-through entity. So the income and expenses pass through to the individual partners. And as I go through these entities, the choice of entity, the various considerations, one, and certainly a big one, is taxes. How are you going to be taxed? And of course, the more tax you pay, the less profit you make. So taxes are everything in the choice of an entity. In a partnership, the taxes flow through to the individuals and you get taxed at the individual rates, no double taxation. The next entity would be a corporation. And a corporation can go either way, double taxation with a C Corp where you get taxed on the corporate level with a corporate tax and a pretty healthy one. And then with what is left, as you pay that out in a distribution or a dividend, you get taxed again on the dividend at your individual rates. That's double taxation and not good. You don't have too much left. Now, with a corporation, you can, if you form a corporation and just go down the road and buy the property, you will be a C Corp, as they call it, and that's the double taxation. If you make your election timely as an S Corp, you become an S Corp, no more taxation on the corporate level, it just passes through. This used to be used a lot in real estate because it gave you a good tax treatment, no double taxation, and it gave you limited liability. That's the other thing, and really a big reason that gets us into these entities. If the corporation or your entity is sued because you had, any number of reasons,
Sure.
you have a fire, no smoke alarms because you didn't have them in there. There's going to be some pretty hefty lawsuits coming. And arguably, if you have an entity, only the entity is liable. So if you have 20 different pieces of property, one entity owns a piece of property, and there's a calamity or your negligence that causes a loss, they can only take the assets in the entity. They can't go outside the entity and take your other assets. That's called limited liability. Now, with the S Corporation, there are a number of restrictive requirements. If you number of shareholders, you can't have different classes of shareholders. And if you breach any of those requirements, you lose your S Corporation treatment and you're back to a C Corporation, which is a problem because the double taxation.
Right.
It can be a nightmare. Some time ago, the state of Minnesota introduced the concept of a limited liability company. And they have limited liability companies and they have limited liability partnerships. The limited liability company has limited liability, so it's good in that regard. And it doesn't have the restrictions that the S Corp has with respect to the pass-through of the income. So you don't have the double taxation and you have the limited liability. So that is, you're just LLCs, as they call them. You see a lot of them out there, and that is, without any other considerations, probably the entity of choice right now, and that's what we see the most of. A default position, if you start your limited liability company and you do nothing, you are taxed with the pass-through. If you make an election to be taxed like a C Corp is, you can get your double taxation. No,
Right.
There's not many real estate ventures that we see where the double taxation would make any sense. It does happen, but it takes a lot of planning and maneuvering to expense your compensation and get the expenses where your income's down to avoid the double taxation. So that's a limited liability company. There's also a trust,
Right.
which is sort of a special breed. You're seeing more and more of it, but it is something you would use if you have special wants and desires for the property that go beyond your lifetime, or and sometimes you find it with respect to family cabins or family second homes, or children with special needs, or younger children where the parent wants a third party watching the property and watching the distribution of the income and expenses.
So
Go
can I
ahead.
just interrupt a moment? Yeah, I kind of wanted to go back a little bit about some of those business structures in terms of, so for me, for what it sounds like, a really good, option for folks if they're investing in real estate would either to be, to do a sole proprietorship or an LLC partnership in some way. So it's like that pass through, right? And then you don't get the double taxation. What about when it comes to, buy and holds or long-term holds? And I know a lot of people have those inside LLCs as well, but would you say there's a limit on how many doors, right, they would have under that LLC for asset protection? Like if you own an apartment building, would it be appropriate to have just one apartment building under that LLC? Or if you own 6 single family homes, should you have an individual LLC for each of those? Should they be under, 4 doors under that? What does that structure look like? Because I do want to talk about trust, but I just wanted to kind of firm up some of that stuff before we moved on.
Sure. Well, with respect to how many doors, there are people out there, Jen, who will form an LLC or their entity of choice for each house they buy or each project, and if they are going to have 100 houses over their career, they will have had 100 LLCs. There is case law in Minnesota that suggests if there's a serial use of an entity limiting the liability, that you lose your limit of liability.
Okay.
Let me, whether you separate it by doors or by project, I don't know that in the big picture that helps limit your liability.
Okay.
The limited liability is a fragile aspect to these entities. Your first, why do you want to limit your liability? A couple of different reasons. One, you have a project and the unexpected happens. The costs get out of control. You find unexpected soil conditions, unexpected costs, and you get significant cost overruns, and you can't make it work, and all the creditors come after you for the unpaid bills. So it protects you against the creditors, or protects you against the calamity. House burns down, and there's someone dies, 2 people, whatever, there's death or severe injury, and you didn't have smoke alarms, or your sprinkler system didn't work because of lack of maintenance or whatever. And that's the mammoth lawsuit coming. And with respect to that, your first line of defense always against the calamity is your insurance. You need insurance, and very, very important part of investing is to make sure you have adequate liability insurance. Certainly you want the fire and extended coverage that covers against losing your structure, but you also want liability for the slip and falls, for no smoke detectors, and certainly creditors in a situation that doesn't work out as planned.
Right.
The courts, and I have seen, I don't know if I can say thousands with an S, but I've seen more than 1,000 entities set up, and often I get them after the fact, A person will say, I need an LLC. They go to buy their project, they go on, they file an LLC with the Secretary of State, they pay their $155, and they get in the mail a certificate of organization and the articles that they filled in while they're online. And they come in and say, well, I have a limited liability company. The courts have held, and certainly it is the prevailing law in Minnesota that you will only get the protection of limited liability if you observe, well, one, you've got to be properly capitalized. You can't put $1 in and for $1 million project. That's insufficient capitalization, and you will lose any limited liability protection you have. You've got to have the proper documentation. You have to have regular meetings. You can't use it as a piggy bank. Your financial accounts and bank accounts as a piggy bank for the dominant shareholder. It has to, your finances have to be for company matters and not for expenditures at the liquor store or at the grocery store or family expenses.
Oh gosh, I hope not.
Yeah, right. So you can't have siphoning of funds by the dominant shareholder, and you can't have just one officer, the president, and all the other officers and directors just not involved at all.
Sure.
You need uniform governance. You need to have your annual meeting, you need to have your regular meetings, and you have to keep records. So all of that stuff has to be done,
right,
to get to have the limited liability.
To keep that corporate veil more or less, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
The corporate veil will be pierced if you don't follow. These are they call them the Victoria Elevator Company case, where they laid out the 8 elements of what they will look at. So it takes more than just filing a company with the Secretary of State. You don't get the protection without playing the game, so to speak, and acting like a corporation.
Okay. So more or less what you're saying then is, it's important to have these business structures in place, but we have to make sure that we follow whatever those rules are in order to make sure that those corporate veils, in a sense, are not pierced, because they can work to benefit for you. But if you don't follow the rules and do what you're supposed to do, then you're in a sense, it kind of goes away and that limited liability isn't available anymore.
That's correct.
Right. Okay. So when we go to a trust now, right? So if somebody is looking to use a trust, whether it's a personal trust, right? That's one sense that folks use, that you said, if it's looking to pass down, assets to families or whatever is special needs or whatever that is. But what would be an appropriate use for a land trust?
Well, a land trust is nothing special. It's just another trust. And I see, and you see more and more real estate as held in trust,
yes,
not because the trust is the perfect entity to hold it in, but because of the overall estate plan of the investor. And the family trust is the big thing, where the husband and wife have all their assets in a family trust, and they skip the having to probate the assets when the first and the second diet just passes through. And that's where you are seeing the use of the trusts, and it's becoming more, you're seeing more and more of it. But seldom would you just buy a piece of property if you were going to flip it or a short-term hold with a trust. The trust is most often more of a long-term vehicle, and it's done in connection with an overall estate plan.
Okay. So if somebody then here's my thing that I question too, is because I've had to be a little bit more creative, right? When it's come to some of the deals that I've had to do lately, where I could be joint venturing with another partner, meaning like that person could be funding, maybe not necessarily as a hard money loan, but joint venturing in the project. So funding the money part and we're doing the work, vice versa, or even joint venturing, with a homeowner. What do you feel like would be the best structure if you have, two people who are maybe not part of the same entity going in on a deal together?
Well, if they, the classic way is two people, they'll title the entity into, or title the property into the entity, and they each own their piece.
Okay.
And certainly, and most often, one person is going to do one part of it, the other person is going to do another part, contribute the money, or do the actual construction, or own the property. There's just a bunch of different ways that it comes together, but you can use a note and a mortgage for the financial contribution,
right?
And have then pay back the mortgage, or pay back the note, as well as have an agreement with respect to the profits.
Okay.
Very, very important when you go into these things to have a written agreement. I spent a lot of time working with people who didn't have an agreement. It was their best friend, or it was their girlfriend, or it was their son, family member, and it just doesn't, I'll say often, it doesn't work out in the end. And there's a big rhubarb at the end with respect to who gets the profit, who gets paid for what, and how does it get split up. And real easy to have a good understanding up front and have it all in writing, and then certainly choose the right entity. So you can use, there's a bunch of different ways to protect the parties, but the classic way is put everyone in title. If there's, sometimes you don't want to put everyone in title. If there's a person with a house and it's a rehab to sell, sometimes it's better to let the person own the house, and not transfer the title because of the problem with when you go to get the mortgage on the resale. But then the person is contributing the services, and some of the costs of the materials can have a mortgage and note, and a firm agreement with respect to what happens following upon resale.
Right. So more or less, it's just about having everything down on paper of who's responsible for what, putting everybody on title, perhaps recording a note, and then, like you said, just signing that document and getting to work.
Absolutely.
Okay. So believe it or not, we're kind of close to the end of our time. That went by really quickly.
Yeah.
Last parting words, right? For somebody who's really interested in getting involved in real estate, but is just kind of worried about taking that first step because they don't necessarily know how to structure deals. What would you say would be, the best thing that they could do to get set up to be successful when it comes to like business structures and assets?
Well, yeah, there's a bunch of different things depending what direction you're going in, but usually an LLC is a good choice for the structure. I would say just a couple of things. If you're using an attorney to help you get started, make sure you have an accountant who's going to work, or at least communicate with the attorney. If the attorney sets up an entity and does S-election and does this and that, then you go to your accountant in April of the following year, and the accountant says, boy, this isn't the way I would have done it. You're going down the wrong way. So have the attorney talking with the accountant, get your accountant involved early. They will be there the following April. And, get a good attorney, work with good people.
Like you?
Yeah. And let me give Jen a plug. Jen's a real professional. She knows what she's doing. She gets the job done right, and I highly recommend Jen for
Thank
as a real estate professional.
Thank
You'll
you.
be dealing with the best.
Thank you. We're going to have Dick's information here also in our comments about how to get a hold of him. Like I said, he has answered every question I've ever had. He's been a really, really great at giving information, giving you the right direction. And so if you're questioning things or want to get started, at least give him a call, shoot him an email, whatever it is, like I said, to get some information to help you guys out if you're looking to really start investing in real estate, or even, you know, commercial real estate. He does that as well. Or if you're even personally looking for a home or different things, a way to structure things, especially if you'd like a cabin or a second home, it would be really great to get in touch with Dick. So like I said, we're going to provide his information in the comments to get a hold of him. Thank you for joining us, Dick. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, and for those of you who are looking to sell your real estate quickly or need to, you know, sell your home for cash or terms, please contact us. Katie's going to put her information in the comments. You can get a hold of me here on Facebook. You can direct message me, shoot me an email, send me a message. You can also check out our website, www.propertyhousepartners.com. That will also have our video library where all of these videos that I've done over the last 8 months or so will be available to you if you're not able to find it in my Facebook feed. And as always, you can see a lot of our before and after pictures on our Instagram, which is Property House Partners. Next week is our housing update, and I will be talking about what's going on with mortgage forbearances, all of those typical things that I do in the third week. So I look forward to seeing you guys then. Thank you again, Dick, for joining me. And
Thank you.
see you guys next time.
Yep.